For some reason, the Minnesota Wild seem to want to move on from Marco Rossi. The Blue Jackets should be all over this. And I'll tell you why on today's Locked On Blue Jackets.
You're Locked On Blue Jackets, your daily podcast on the Columbus Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome to Locked On Blue Jackets, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I am, as always, your host, Jay Foster, here to give you the good, the bad, and the ugly about your favorite team and mine, the Columbus Blue Jackets. Before we get things started, I want to thank everyone for making this your first listen of the day every single day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms and over on YouTube. Now, we're going to kind of keep on keeping on with our series of, this player is available. Should they go to the Blue Jackets? Could they go to the Blue Jackets? What would they cost? Etc., etc. And today we're looking at Marco Rossi, who, again, similar in a way to the Jason Roberts of it all. I don't understand why the team would consider moving on from him. And I do think, by the way, with the firing of Pete DeBoer, the Stars might end up changing their tune and those rumors might start quieting down and they might actually say something like, hey, we're not trading our best goal scorer. Stop it. But they haven't said that yet. So I think it's perfectly valid to talk about that. But in a similar vein, for some reason, the Minnesota Wild and Marco Rossi seem to be in the middle of a breakup. And I don't know if this is a team thing or a player thing or, little column A, little column B. But if Marco Rossi is available for trade, and the more it comes out that I think there was a report yesterday, maybe, that basically said that the two parties, so the team and the player, are kind of at a standstill at the minute. No one's really willing to move. And if that is true and this player is available, the Blue Jackets should absolutely be in on a guy like Marco Rossi. And so that's what we're going to talk about today, is we'll talk a little bit about kind of Marco Rossi, the player, what that trade could look like, how he would fit in with the team. Does he fill a hole that the Blue Jackets are looking for right now, or is this just, hey, a good young player, let's grab him, right? So Marco Rossi, I believe, is technically a center. However, that doesn't mean that he can't play on the wing, right? And also, after here's the thing about the Blue Jackets specifically. I don't know whether this is me specific trauma or Blue Jacket specific trauma, or if everyone feels like this, but the Blue Jackets have had so few seasons where they have had enough centers, and it got tested last season, right? When Monahan went down and Sillinger went down, it was like, oh God, who's going to play center for this team who is not named Adam Fantilli, right? And they figured it out. Luca Del Baluz did an admirable job. Sean Corrali was their fourth line center. They made it work, right? They moved Jenna back there for a little while, I think. But the Blue Jackets right now only really have two top six centers. And that's Adam Fantilli and Sean Monahan, right? I think there is potential there with Cole Sillinger. I do think he's more of a middle six guy, if knock on wood here, because my hockey power is going to be used to evil. But if one of Fantilli and or Monahan goes down early in the season, Cole Sillinger steps up in theory. And I'm not too stressed about that, but I do also think, okay, you could never have enough guys that can play center on a roster, even if some of them have to switch to the wing. So I understand that in theory the Blue Jackets have enough centers. They should be looking and focusing at wingers. Having another guy who knows how to win a faceoff is not the worst thing in the world, right? Marco Rossi, just for clarification's sake, is not the best face-off guy in the world, but neither is anyone on the Blue Jackets that's not named Sean Monahan. So I'm not going to sit here and say that he's an upgrade or he's not an upgrade or he's a liability, etc. Marco Rossi is 23 years old. He has played 2 full seasons of NHL hockey. He played all 82 games this season and last season. The season before that, he played 19 games, and the season before that, he played 2 games. Now, Marco Rossi, I believe, had some real issues with long COVID, if I'm not mistaken. That was what his that was his kind of not drawback, but like his what's the word I want? Like the reason that he was delayed making his making his real full NHL debut until last season is because of this, right? Because like basically he got COVID and they realized that he had a heart thing as well. And the combination of the COVID and the heart thing almost killed him. And by all accounts, he's fine now. He's completely healthy, etc., etc. Again, he's played 164 regular season games over the last 2 seasons, which I don't know if there is a Blue Jacket that's done that. And the other thing is, he is still very young. He is just coming off his ELC. He had 60 points in 82 games this season, and it feels like he's only going to get better from here, right? Former first-round pick, 9th overall in 2020. Again, there was a little bit of some delays with his development, and it seems like it's turning out fine, right? I don't understand why the team would consider moving on from him. The team is built kind of weirdly at the minute. Like they are paying a not insignificant amount of money to guys like Freddie Gaudreau, for example. Matt Zuccarello is still making a decent amount of money. Marcus Foligno is making a decent amount of money. I for sure thought that Marco Rossi was going to be part of this team's future, right? Unless they're worried that like they won't be able to fit Kirill Kaprizov under the salary cap, and that's why they're trying to shed money now. Kirill Kaprizov is currently making $9 million as a UFA at the end of next summer. I can understand if they're maybe a little bit nervous that they are going to be able to fit his cap hit under if they extend Rossi long term. On the back end, they are paying Jacob Middleton $4.5 million for some reason until 2029. Like they've got a lot of money tied up in some really random players. They've locked up some of their young core. Brock Faber, they've locked up, which is great. Matt Boldy, they've locked up, which is great. Like Joel Eriksson Ek is not young, but they've got him locked up to a very reasonable cap hit. Like, and on the flip side, they're paying Ryan Hartman $4 million for the next 2 seasons. So like the cap situation is not terrible. It's also not like as bad as it could be. They are still paying Zach Parise and Ryan Suter, which I do think is very funny. But like similar to the Rossi situation, similar to the Robertson situation, excuse me. Like it really does feel like this is we're trying to get out ahead of the cap issues, and unfortunately, that means parting with the guy that we don't have locked up long term yet. Obviously, there is nothing to say that he can't change his mind and go back to Minnesota, but I do wonder if it's a case of the team has said to his agent, like, well, we can't afford what he wants. And so the agent's like, well, in that case, we're not settling for less, you know? So that's kind of where I see the Rossi situation being. The good news is the Blue Jackets have approximately $1 bajillion in cap space. So, like, that's not really a worry for them. The worry is going to be, like, how much is this going to cost the Blue Jackets or any team that trades for Marco Rossi, right? So let's take a quick break and let's throw some trade proposals around just because I think it's fun. We'll do that in just a second here at Locked On Blue Jackets. First, I'm going to tell you all about Monarch Money. Do you ever check your bank account and wonder where did all your money go? Dining out, online shopping, entertainment. It's super easy to lose track. I do it all the time. That's where Monarch Money comes in. They're your personal CFO, giving you full visibility and control over your finances, and they're not just a budgeting app. They are a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you can stop just managing your money and start building wealth. When I started using Monarch, I realized just how much I was spending on snacks and little treats and stuff when I'm out and about. Now I budget smarter and I save more. And instead of juggling multiple apps, you can use Monarch to check your finances, track spending, and even plan long-term goals all in one place, which is something that I really, really love. Do what I did. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONNHL at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONNHL for 50% off your first year. Welcome back to Locked On Blue Jackets. Talking about Marco Rossi today. We've kind of talked a little bit about Marco Rossi, the player. Again, 60 points this season, 24 goals. Is only going to get better from here. Is only 23 years old. Is just finishing off his ELC. Is basically, it feels like whoever gets Rossi is going to make Minnesota look very, very stupid for getting rid of him very, very fast. Because I really do feel like regardless of what team he plays on next season, he's going to pop, right? But how do the Blue Jackets make sure that it's them that gets Rossi? He will be less expensive than a lot of the big names that are out there, right? Like, I know that there is, we talked about Jason Robertson last week, obviously. Like, he's another guy that could be made available in a trade. We talked a little bit about a couple of the Sabres, another pending RFA in JJ Peterka, right? Like, Rossi is a little bit more established than Peterka, I feel like. Has a lot more, not maybe a lot more potential, but has similar levels of potential, is still very young. And everyone and their wives know that it's kind of basically game over with Minnesota, right? So Minnesota, Bill Guerin, I wonder if it's something along the lines of the Jiricek trade, right? And I might just be saying that because of this. Obviously, Minnesota is the team that traded for David Jiricek last season, but I wonder if you're going to get something similar back of player disgruntled with the team, doesn't want to be there. Everyone knows it. Could the Blue Jackets give Minnesota their first round pick back and also a player? Like, it'll be interesting because if I flip back to what the Minnesota cap situation is like, they've got $15 million in cap space at the minute, which is not nothing. They've got 11 forwards, 7 defensemen, and 2 goaltenders in there. So they're not like super cap strapped, right? They've got, obviously, they want to save some for next season when Kaprizov is up. Liam Öhgren's going to be coming off of his entry-level contract in a season or two. Zeev Buium as well. David Jiricek needs a new contract next season, depending on, where that goes, things like that. But they're not in dire cap situation. Like, for example, the Dallas Stars are, right? Where they somehow have to fit 4 or 5 players into $6 million of cap space, right? The Wild have $15 million to spend on a couple of forwards, maybe another goalie. So it's not a case of, well, we can free up some cap space for you, right? Is it a case of, do you give them their first round pick back and then take, for example, if we go the cap strap situation, if we go for the cap relief situation, do you take someone like a Ryan Hartman back in cap relief, and that frees up another $4 million for Minnesota? I don't know that that's the move. I keep going back to Igor Chinikov as an option, which I don't love, emotionally speaking, right? Because I like him a lot as a player, and I do think he got a bad. I think he got a bum rap, especially at the end of last season. Like, that Chinikov, Monahan, Marchenko line was great right up until Chinikov got injured, and I don't think he was 100% at the end of the season, right? Didn't play a ton. Even when he was in the games, he wasn't playing a ton. Didn't really make the same mark on the game as he was making before he got injured. So that being said, he does feel like the easiest piece to move if a team is looking for a young player with potential who's not who's not incomplete, doesn't need a new contract immediately, right? Igor Chinikov has 1 year left at $2.1 million, which is very reasonable, especially if he pops. Like, I think a lot of people in the Blue Jackets are hoping that he's going to pop if he's still on their team, right? But he's 24 years old, left wing, extremely good shot, extremely good goal scorer. When he's on, he's really on, right? He could be a guy that is maybe not the direct replacement for Marco Rossi, but is a guy that could conceivably be that replacement, right? The other question is Minnesota going to want a center in replacement? In which case, that does feel a little bit like it's the start of game over, right? Because I'm looking at Blue Jackets center depth right now. You've got Monahan, that's a no. You've got Fantilli, that's a no. Cole Sillinger, for me, that's a no. I don't think, again, a Sillinger for Rossi swap feels not ideal for me. Going down the line, other centers on the roster, Boone Jenner, that feels like a no, not necessarily because that's the move that the team shouldn't make, but because that's the move that the team won't make. Luca Del Baluz, that feels like a no. I think this team is really high on him. Sean Corrali pending UFA. Luke Cunnin pending UFA. Dmitry Voronkov, that feels like that's a no. Just a Danforth pending UFA. And then when you go down into the non-roster forwards, again, the center depth down there, you got Luca Pinelli. To me, that feels like a no. James Malatesta potentially is a guy that I would consider moving, but I don't know that he has that 2C potential that the Wild are probably looking for to replace Rossi with, right? Because that's their issue now. Is you look at their center depth or their roster breakdown in terms of what their team looks like, and I'm like, okay, well, they've got Joel Eriksson Ek plays center, Ryan Hartman plays center, Freddie Gaudreau plays center, Marcus Johansson plays center. That's it. That's your four centers that they've got, right? And that's not gonna do it. It just isn't gonna do it, right? I am going off, by the way, I'm not super familiar with the Wild these days, so I'm just going off of what Puckpedia has listed as player positions. So if I am wrong and Matt Boldy is suddenly a center, at me, I guess, but don't at me too loudly. I'm not super familiar with the Wild, so I'm just kind of going off of what Puckpedia says in terms of their positions. So that feels like a non-starter. In terms of if the Wild are looking for a player of a similar caliber who is maybe looking for a fresh start, I don't know that the Blue Jackets have anything to offer there. If the answer, if the question is a first round pick and potential in a similar way that the Blue Jackets got that first round pick and Damon Hunt, who is potential for David Jiricek, that, it feels like there could be a similar trade made there. If they are really high on someone like Igor Chinikov, Chinikov and giving the Wild their own pick back, I think is probably a scooch too high, but I do think you need at least the first round pick and someone else. And again, looking at the Blue Jackets, what the Blue Jackets have available right now, it feels like they're lacking someone in that kind of not quite as much potential as Igor Chinikov, who could be a really good top six guy, and not quite as little potential as James Malatesta, who's probably going to be a fourth line player if he makes it to the NHL permanently, right? So, you're looking for someone between those two guys. Again, the Blue Jackets are really high on Luca Del Baluz. He's a name that I keep coming back to. But again, I don't know what they want. I don't know what Minnesota wants in return, right? Again, it has to be a center. But unless you want to throw the captain at them in Boone Jenner, I don't know that you have, I don't know that the Blue Jackets have what it takes. So it becomes, okay, well, first round pick and what, right? Do you do a first and a second for Rossi? I probably would. I don't know that Minnesota would. Do you give them 14th overall instead of 20th overall? That might get closer to what Minnesota's interested in. But I do think, regardless of what the end point is, the starting point has to be one of the Blue Jackets' first round picks this year, whether that's their own in 14th overall or whether they give Minnesota their own first round pick back and stuff, right? So that's kind of where I see that trade sitting, is first round pick plus something. That something doesn't have to be a lot, just plus something. If it ends up being a guy like James Malatesta, I like James Malatesta a lot, but I don't know that he would feature in the future of the Blue Jackets like Marco Rossi would. And on that note, we're going to take a quick break. And then when we get back, we'll talk a little bit about how Rossi could fit into this team and what the Blue Jackets could look like once you've kind of reshuffled the depth chart to add a player like Marco Rossi in. So that's coming up in just a second here on Locked on Blue Jackets. Welcome back to Locked on Blue Jackets. We're talking about Marco Rossi. We've almost made a trade, I guess. We've looked at him as a player, and now I want to look a little bit about right, okay, they've made the trade. Let's say, for the sake of argument, that it like Igor Chinakhov has gone to the Wild in return. I don't know whether it's Chinakhov in a second, Chinakhov in a first, whatever. For the sake of argument, let's just say Igor Chinakhov was the player that went back in the Rossi trade. What does the Blue Jackets depth chart look like now? Well, again, Marco Rossi listed as a center. I do think there is potential to put him on the wing. I guess it depends on whether you want him to play as the 3C and to have Cole Sillinger move to the wing, or you want to have Marco Rossi in the top six and have him play wing and again go from there, right? And those are kind of my two options. Is it feels like one of either Rossi and Sillinger is Adam Fantilli's new winger, right? Whether that's Rossi, Fantilli, Johnson, or Sillinger, Rossi. Sillinger, Fantilli, Johnson. You put Marco Rossi in that 3C spot. I don't know that that's. I don't know. I keep going back and forth about this kind of internally, and I'm like, would you rather have him on the second line, or would you rather have him playing his natural position? Which again kind of leads me down a path of maybe this isn't a move that the Blue Jackets make. Because again, Marco Rossi was an extremely good second line C for the Wild. I don't think he quite has 1C potential, especially not on many teams, but is he going to be willing to go somewhere and then be like, well, okay, you were a center and now you're a winger, which I don't know why I do know why there's this quote unquote stigma about wingers being worse than centers, but I think centers want to play center and I think they get kind of annoyed when you put them on the wing. So I don't know whether that would be a deal breaker for Rossi's camp, because that's the other thing is I'm uncomfortable making this move without a contract in place, right? And with the contract in place, Rossi's going to have to be happy to commit to Columbus for multiple years, which again goes into, well, what's the plan, right? I do think that if you put Marco Rossi on a line with Monahan and Marchenko, like that to me feels like a really, really solid line. And then, you figure out what you're going to do with the other top six left wing, whether it's Bronkov, whether it's Jenner, whether it's whoever, right? But I do think that Rossi would fit well with Monahan and Marchenko. I will say also to Rossi's credit is he creates a lot of offense on the power play. At even strength, he's fine. He's slightly better on the power play, I think, which is not terrible. And, I think that this team could probably use more power play efficiency, right? He's also, he's pretty good defensively. He doesn't play a lot of penalty kill, but he's been fine in the penalty kill minutes that he has played. Again, I'm on hockeyviz.com for all of this stuff. And Micah, who runs that site, basically has him grading out as kind of a top second line player, like not quite a first line caliber player, but with the right line mates and the right situation, like I could very easily see him continue to grow. And again, like this has been, he's 23 years old, he's still got growing to do, but after a bumpy first and second year, where again, he played 2 games in his first season, 19 in his second, he has improved from being a fourth line player to being a second line player in the space of those 2 seasons, had a really big jump in his first full season, which I think technically counts as his rookie season. So it feels like there's more there And again, so with Rossi, what you're getting is, you're getting 5-on-5 offense, you're getting 5-on-5 defense, you're getting decent power play numbers, you're getting not terrible penalty kill numbers, which is maybe not like as enthusiastic as it sounds, but like honestly, I will take average penalty kill numbers at this point after how miserable the penalty kill was for large parts of this season. And if you can unlock, that potential there, he had 24 goals this season. There's 30 goals in there. I believe him. And I believe in him. Right? I believe that there's 30 goals in this player, and he's gonna be cheap to acquire, I think. Like, gonna be way cheaper than Jason Robertson. His contract will grade out at less than Robertson as well. You'll almost definitely pay less for him than you will for, for example, Mitch Marner, Nikolai Ehlers, Brock Besser, So if you would rather pay less for a player and give up a pick, then to me, Marco Rossi feels like a pretty good fit. Providing, obviously with the caveat that he's going to have to move to the wing. And so maybe that's, that might be the sticking point for him and his agent is doesn't want to be a winger. So that's kind of how where I'm falling down on this whole thing is because I look at it and I'm like, right, he fits perfectly into this team, right? I think he played for Everson already, so Everson knows him well, or knows him well enough. He was there for like, I think he's played maybe 50 or 60 games for Everson. I'd have to crunch the numbers on that, but that's not nothing. So, again, it feels like if they do go out and acquire him, they're probably doing it because Don Waddell has gone to Everson. Hey, is this guy worth it? Don Waddell is not usually super happy to pay for players that he doesn't know personally or know someone who can vouch for them. So if Rossi is happy being a winger, then this feels like a natural fit. If he is desperate to play center somewhere, then this probably isn't a fit. And that's kind of it's kind of all I've got for today. I think it'll be a great fit. Marco Rossi may not agree, depending on how committed he is to playing center. And again, if there are other teams willing to give more than the Blue Jackets, then they probably should do that, and he should go there instead, right? I will say that he probably holds all the cards because I do suspect that many teams will be like, well, we're not gonna trade for him unless we have a contract in place, right? So do with that what you will. But there's a contract in place. He's happy to play wing. It's affordable. Welcome to the Blue Jackets, Marco Rossi, and it only cost us a first-round pick or Igor Chinakhov. And it doesn't feel good to keep throwing Igor Chinakhov in these trades because, like I said, I do like him a lot, but he does feel like the best piece of trade bait that the Blue Jackets have right now that they are willing to get rid of, right? So, unfortunately, that's just kind of how it is. That's all I've got for today. Tomorrow, I think we're going to do another player review. I don't know who's next on my list. I just got done with Adam Fantilli and Kent Johnson. So it'll be whoever was just below them in scoring. So maybe Dmitry Voronkov? Question mark? I don't know off the top of my head. I should have looked and I didn't. And that's on me. But thank you for listening to this episode, making it your first listen of the day every single day. Locked On Blue Jackets is free and available on all podcast platforms and over on YouTube. Thank you once again for listening. And until tomorrow, make sure you stay locked on.